Hi, this is Bo Roberts, and you're listening to the FSF Podcast.
The show that makes you wish you could send an assassin bot back in time to kill the internet.
Our show is brought to you by our charity sponsor, the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund, which supports the Wish Upon a Teen Foundation that helps out sick kids when they need it most. And just imagine the comfort you'll give Red Shirt crewman number 114. He'll know that when he puts on the red shirt and joins the Spartans against Xerxes in his evading army, that he didn't leave his family destitute and without hope, because the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund has his back, and what's left of his spear and shield.
Our guest today is a much better looking man than I am, and he has the top 50 sexiest man alive nomination to prove it. I don't have that. He does. That's probably a good thing. But he's gone from being a model to an actor to a director, all while smoldering in the sexiness. I'm not jealous. You're jealous. Shut up. Regardless, we are very proud and pleased to welcome Bo Roberts to the FSF podcast. Welcome to the show, Bo.
Hey, Tim. Thank you so much for having me. You as well as Nick. How's it going?
So very far, so good, sir. Yeah, very good. We're excited to have you. We've been looking over your IMDb list, your website, kind of scouring the internets for all things Bo Roberts over the last couple days. We don't like to call it stalking. That just seems rude. But we put a little bow on it and call it research. That's what we call it. So
just call it a professional research.
Yes, it's a professional research of a professional person to have on our unprofessional podcast. There it is.
Good way to put it.
There you go. All right. So, Bo, we love to talk to our guests about their upbringing, their backgrounds, and how that affects their origin story. Because in our story today, in our interview, you are the hero of our story. So we always like to know, because we're nerds, we like to know the origin story of the heroes that sit across the table from us, even though this is a virtual table. So in the case of Bo Roberts, what about your upbringing helped you to be the man we have sitting across the table from us today?
Gotcha. So it all started on a dark and stormy night. So I was born actually in Louisville, Kentucky, but raised just north of it at the very bottom tip of Indiana. And growing up, my family, we own a few truck driving companies. So I've definitely spent time and was actually raised to where at probably about 8 years old, I was actually buffing and polishing fuel tanks on semi trucks and this and that and doing it. But the interesting note with that is my dad would have me do it on his truck, and then that expanded into his friends' trucks and so on and so forth. But the caveat is that he paid me what he would pay anybody else to do it. So it wasn't like, oh, he's my son, so I'll give him $5 and he'll be happy with it. He paid me the same amount that he would anybody else, except he held me to a much higher standard of somebody that, oh, this is my job. I'm just going to kind of go through the motions. Whereas with me, having very solid work ethic was instilled in me at a very early age. And then my stepfather, he has a big truck driving company, and he as kind of a weird side hustle, he had a lot of vending machines, frozen food, snacks, candy bars, soft drinks, you name it, he had it. And he had them in his company out in the garage, at a friendly parts store, at a truck driving academy. He just kind of reached out to his network that he works with and put vending machines in. So when I came into the picture, him and my mom got married when I think I was in eighth grade going into freshman year. So soon after going into freshman year of high school, I actually began taking care of the vending machines. And that was kind of the first job I had. And basically at a very early age, I was introduced to, working hard and kind of earning my keep and having responsibility of things to take care of.
And so moving forward, I would assume that as you became a model and as you were becoming an actor and then even as a director, I would assume that work ethic had to follow you through, because, as a director, especially, you're kind of, the one going, okay, I need this over here, that over there. You got to be the one setting the pace and making sure that things are happening. So I'm assuming that work ethic would have followed you.
Very much. So for me, I shot over 10 short films, and on most of them, I was literally the only crew member on set. And the way I really got into shooting short films was my wife wakes up a couple hours before I do typically, and always has morning meetings and work that has to be done. So my mornings were pretty open with kind of how I'm scheduling them. So I took that time to have breakfast, but have breakfast with a computer in front of me and YouTube playing. And it was just tutorials on filmmaking. So for about a span of 3 months, I would study only lighting for 3 months, sound and how to capture it properly, and then move into post-production. And I would just kind of flow from one topic to the next. And then once I began shooting short films, that's when I would put it all into practice. Like, okay, you just studied using light, so let's use light to make it look like it's midnight or 2 a.m. outside. How do you do that? So I began hanging out with friends I went to acting school with, and we would just shoot really fun, goofy content that wasn't even scripted most of the time, because my agenda was to, kind of do homework on stuff that I was learning online. So yeah, from being a solo filmmaker all the way up to shooting my movie. I shot that movie, and I did a massive upgrade. I absolutely doubled my crew size. So I shot my full-length movie with me and one other person. So it was 2 people for multiple weeks, handling, company moves to various locations and having to take care of, it's like, yeah, I'm wanting to direct, but it's lunch arriving when it's supposed to. Is this happening? And, all of these little tiny things. So yeah, coming from a background where work ethic was instilled at a very early age, I can definitely see how that paid off for me.
That kind of leads into my question, or my next question is, you seem like, as I was scrolling through your IMDb, you seem to have your fingers in like a lot of different roles, as you were mentioning, in the entertainment production, such as actor, director, cinematographer, producer, camera and electrical, editor. So definitely a lot of different hats. So which one of these is your preferred job role, and what about that role is most fun for you?
Gotcha. So for me, directing is definitely what's currently holding my attention. Working as a grip and working with the lighting team, I appreciate it. And if a job comes up for it, like, I'm still interested in doing that, just because, the times that I've done it, my knowledge and experience has grown leaps and bounds to where I kind of cherry pick on, okay, this is a very small budget feature. Okay, this one has a couple $1 million behind it, and I'm making sense of how everybody operates. So for me, I view every job that I take on, you can put me in as a second, or, in the assistant director path, kind of working with scheduling or interacting with talent. I was even the head of Transco. Did that on a movie that went out to Netflix. So doing all of these things has given me a lot of scope. So now as a director and kind of overall filmmaker, to where the movie I just shot, that was all self-funded. So I'm like, I have to know where everything is constantly and know what's achievable. That was a very big part of it. So I'm very appreciative for various positions I've worked in. And my interest in psychology is what has really led me into directing, where it's like when I worked 10 years on camera, modeling and acting, I was introverted and making sense of the script on how I react in the situation. But at the end of the day, I'm helping somebody else explain their vision and their story. Whereas now as a director, I am the one creating, the story in most cases, and making sense of kind of what is the note behind the note, or like, what's the actual message I'm trying to say. So yeah, that definitely has my attention.
Very good.
And now, a word from our show sponsor, Level Up Sabers. Their link can be found in the show notes.
now, so for many actors or directors that we've talked with, their favorite project is always the one that they're working on right now, or the one that they just finished. So let's talk about what you've recently worked on and maybe give us an idea of what's coming up on the docket.
Well, the most recent project I had done, I was actually director of photography on something, and that was actually a lot of fun because it's actually going to festival, so I can't say too much about it, but
Understood.
it was that first time that, okay, I've been learning about camera movements and lighting, doing all of this stuff. And this was the first script that landed on my lap to where camera movement really helped tell the story. Whereas a lot of people have seen the I think it's on HBO Max, but it's called Euphoria, and how they have almost a dreamlike, unrealistic color hue that accompanies the show because the hues of the color that's used represents the emotion of the scene and what characters are going through. So, being expressionistic like that, it's a lot of fun to do, but I haven't really come across a script where it's like, oh, the camera angle, it means so much for this particular angle because it symbolizes this. So that was something that I actually had a lot of fun doing. And what's on the horizon for me, I've actually gone back and put my writing hat on, and I'm creating the next story, one of which is kind of my modern day take on Dante's Inferno. That's called The Color of Sin, where back to being expressionistic, you have the, nine levels of hell, and each sin, I've actually been going in and doing, some research on it, like a writer should. But, I found out interesting things that, like the sin of lust, it's actually more blue than, like a passionate red. So that was kind of news to me. So that's a project where I plan on utilizing color to tell the story very heavily. I have that one, and then I have one it has a bit more of a ghost house feeling to it because the movie that I shot, The Great Awakening, that's much more of a sci-fi thriller with some horror aspects to it. And now, like, I'm wanting to do something that can't really be confused. This is definitely like a horror movie that I'm wanting to do next.
My interest is piqued on the Dante's Inferno take because there's so many different things with all the different levels of hell and everything that there's a lot of different stories that can be told there. And I'm really curious about the way that you'll do it with the colors and how the colors tie in and how that, like you said, the expressionistic side of it will all be taken, because there's been a lot of attempts to tell that story, and I there's a couple good ones out there, but I think if you can do it in a fresh and new way, and that certainly sounds what you're doing, I think that could be a really cool thing. 100%.
And to me, that's an awesome thing about taking these epics and these stories that are just as old as time, that they've been done before. So it's like, okay, I see how this person did it, but this is how I'm wanting to do it. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it comes out, because it's an extremely old story that is being told, but I'm updating it to where it's set in like modern day. And like there's even an aspect of it being a silent disco is kind of part of what triggers things. So you have that modern day aesthetic with this extremely old storyline.
That's really cool. Especially because and I'm going to completely make myself sound really old and outdated here. I only figured out or discovered what a silent disco was like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember what I was watching, and all these people were dancing around with headphones on, but there was no sound. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Yeah. It seems nice if you're wanting to be polite for neighbors. I personally haven't partaken in one, but it's interesting. And it seems like it would be super awkward the moment you take your headphones off and you just hear a bunch of heavy breathing and people, stomping their feet on the ground, and just it'd be a unique experience.
I think the one that I was watching, I think it was on a TikTok, honestly, and somebody had done it while everybody was listening to "Since You've Been Gone" by Kelly Clarkson, and he recorded it up to the point of them getting to the chorus, and then everybody just shriek. There's no music, nothing's playing, and then you can hear all these voices just shriek "Since You've Been Gone" and all these off tones, and it was pretty funny. But
that's awesome. But yeah, to me, like if somebody recorded me in that fashion, I'm like, it would feel almost like I was being pranked, because I'm a terrible singer, but that doesn't stop me. I love singing karaoke, but when there's no music or anything, that would be, that'd be fun.
You would also hear a lot of rustling of clothes. You'd be surprised how loud the rustling of clothes is when there's no other sound around you. I've attended some like all sign language type conventions, and it's surprisingly loud, but you also hear the snores and the sniffles, and you just hear everything you don't think you would hear. But it's a lot of fun. And when you mentioned the part about how the camera angle also affects the feelings and stuff in a movie, and I'm like, great, now I have to go through and watch all these movies again and just focus in on like the camera angles. And I never thought about that before.
Oh yeah, so kind of a common theme is that I've encountered is that if you ask a DP, why is the camera movement happening this way, or why is that light there, they should have an answer for you. So yeah, it's like, to get very basic with it, if you want someone to look heroic, give them the Rocky Balboa angle and shoot up at them. It makes them look larger than life and stuff like that. So, that's one example. And then if somebody is walking this way, it kind of helps if the camera is kind of panning with them, or, trucking or sliding in that direction. A whole bunch of ways to, create an image to where like the viewer, their eye naturally kind of goes to a certain spot on screen. And, that when you learn how to do that, that's when you can really have fun with the audience, to where their eye goes there and nothing's happening yet, but something definitely does take place there. So it's, camera movement. It's a lot of fun to get into.
The only thing I remember from my film class was the Hitchcock zoom.
Oh yeah.
That's, I think, one of my favorites, and I'm like, oh, I see what they did there.
Yeah.
But we love stories, and one of the things we love to hear is those moments behind the scenes that has either touched your heart or you thought was hysterical. Because we don't often get to hear these behind the scene moments in various things. So what was something to you that touched your heart or was hysterical?
It wasn't hysterical, but the only option I had to do at that time was laugh about it. So when I was filming my movie, The Great Awakening, there was a scene to where, like, so much of it is meant to have kind of a claustrophobic, one spot that we're shooting at for the vast majority. So now we have this one location that's like way out inside the forest, and I'm talking way out to the tune of, we drove about 6.5 hours outside of Los Angeles to get to a place that you do a 360 spin, you only see trees, and then you drive down that backcountry road, go through a very tiny town that I don't think it had a stoplight, just stop signs. And then from that point, you go another 6 miles off into the forest, drive off the paved road, and then eventually you get to a spot. So we're all the way out in the forest, and we're shooting some hiking footage and B-roll and stuff like that. And then the sun finally goes down, so we can get to the dialogue and for the meat and potatoes of the scene that we came to shoot. And we set the light up, camera's ready. We're like moments away from the take, and my tooth broke.
Oh no.
So yeah. So
oh no.
Out in the middle of nowhere. And then that's also where, the budget comes into mind, to where initially I was lying to people and trying to fluff up the budget to make it sound more big budget and say it was filmed for, $5,000 or $2,500. But to be honest, I made this movie for $1,600. And so to go 6.5 hours north at least, and to get, four to five hotel rooms and, just everything. I'm like, I have one shot at this. Like, we're definitely not coming back here, so we better get it.
Right.
And of course, that's when my tooth breaks. So I put in a napkin, and then I put it back into my pocket and said, all right, we got to go. So we spent the whole night shooting, went back to the hotel, woke up the next morning, came back, shot more B-roll footage, and then drove all the way back to Los Angeles. And then I had to do an emergency reschedule. So the day after we got back, I could actually get into the dentist. So yeah, it's I didn't. Well, I suppose that I could say I found the humor in it because it's like it happened, and my knee-jerk reaction was I just started laughing. What do you do with it?
At least you didn't break your humerus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see what you did there.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Your budget just increased. You had a $1,600 budget, and then you had whatever your emergency dental bill was. So probably doubled your budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what else are you gonna do? That it is funny, but it's not funny. But what are you gonna do? You have to laugh.
Today it's funny, but the moment it happened, you have so many thoughts. So as it's happening, it was a lot less comical kind of once that situation set in, and it was a tiny bit sensitive. So but it was like just laugh it off and go. And that's back to me working as a PA, a key PA, second transpo captain, and doing all of this stuff. So many people just want to blast off and say, oh, I'm just going off to shoot a feature film. And I'm like, okay, how many shorts have you done? Oh, I haven't done one yet, but I'm just going to go off and shoot a feature. And I'm like, I call them the movie pixies, to where you have these fairies that you can't see, but their agenda is just to eventually drop kick you, sometimes literally right in the teeth, and be like, okay, what are you going to do? You thought filmmaking, this is how it's going down. All of a sudden you have to pivot, and I hope you're prepared for it. So
exactly.
Yeah. So in my case, it was just shove the tooth in your pocket and soldier on.
There you go. Yeah, I think that you did probably the only choice you had at the moment. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And now a word from our sponsor. Since 1982, Vital Signs and Graphics has been helping professionals with all their image, logo, and design needs. Perhaps you're looking for signs and banners, truck and trailer lettering, business cards, brochures, or other image and marketing aids. Vital Signs and Graphics in-house design studio has you covered. From logos to apparel, start to finish, Vital Signs and Graphics has everything you need to look and feel professional. Call Rick at 231-652-3300. He'll get you noticed. Welcome back to the FSF Popcast.
All right. So I also think that means you were probably a little tougher than I am too, because I probably would have laughed from being angry, laughed to hide the fact that I probably wanted to cry, and then laughed because I found it funny. But I also think that means you're a little tougher because I also found out, because that whole stalking thing we were talking about earlier, that you also spent some time training.
Research.
Yeah, I'm sorry, professional researching for our unprofessional podcast. Yes, that you spent some time as an MMA fighter. So in the training and in fighting and all those things. Now, there's a saying going around, maybe you've heard it, that everybody thinks they're tough until they're punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
So you clearly probably got punched in the face with little regularity. So how do you prepare yourself to know that I'm going to go do something where the guy standing in front of me is going to punch me in the face, and he may not even be, he may not even be angry at me. He could be a good friend, and he's going to punch me in the face. How do you prepare for that? And does anything that you did as training for MMA, does that transfer into anything you're doing now?
Gotcha. So yeah, going into, well, just the arts in general, whether it be if you're doing what, karate, or like actually last week, since 2020, last week was the first time I've gone back to training jiu-jitsu. And yeah, it's very similar to, fight training, to where like, yeah, we're buddies, and we can still hang out and be friends and text each other and all of this stuff. But when we're sparring, I'm literally trying to choke you unconscious until you tap out, or straighten your arm until you tap out, or it snaps. So it is a very interesting mentality to have going into it, and such a barbaric way. Yeah, the fun and the thrill of doing that, it outweighs the potential side effects of it. But yeah, and that's. So when you train, everybody that's trained for a long time, so like in jiu-jitsu, you have a belt system that goes from white to black. And fun sidebar, the story of it going from white to black is you would have your belt, and that's just all it is. And over the years and years of people tugging on it, the sweat, and just rolling on the ground, it would get so discolored that it would eventually turn black. So that's why you have that progression. But yeah, so when you have a lot of more veteran fighters, and then they have like a white belt come in, they're a little on edge, because it's always the new guys that try and go too hard, or they don't know how to control their weapons, and all of a sudden they put their head up and just bust you right in the teeth. And that's when the bad stuff happens. That, and people walk in the gym door with egos and stuff like that. But it's, people that have been doing it for a long time, they get it to where like, oh, we're just rolling to just work on the technical aspects of it. And, we have a fun sparring session here, and we kind of test each other's strength. But when it comes down to actually doing the choke, you have, kind of a code of honor, to where it's like, you're not trying to, pull someone's head off their shoulders.
So we have a Facebook group, and it has over 200,000 members, and it's just filled with memes of every sort of fandom. So when you are relaxing and taking some time to yourself, what do you, Bo, like to hang your fandom hat on?
So for me, I'm a big fan of horror movies. That's my favorite genre. My Aunt Sheila worked at Movies to Go when I was growing up. So every night she could come home with 3 movies, and one of them would typically be a horror movie. So I borrowed a lot of them. And like the first time I watched The Exorcist, I was about 9 years old, home alone during a thunderstorm, watching it in my bedroom. And so that was an experience. But yeah, so I love watching horror movies, and you definitely have the ones from like A24 that are like, this is a horror movie and horrific aspects and stuff, and it's unrelenting with the tension. But then you have this other category of horror movies that are very self-aware, to where as they make stuff, it's a bit more tongue-in-cheek. So an example would be like, you have Freddy Krueger, that, that's a proper horror movie, but all of a sudden he's coming up with these funny one-liners before he kills somebody. So you have that, and some people keep it a bit more kind of tapered down, and some people exploit it much more. But yeah, so for me, yeah, if I'm just kind of hanging out and have some time to myself, yeah, just finding a fun horror movie, which is like, to me, those are more timeless, because some of them, can be as ridiculous as ones being made now, or just as crazy as ones that came out, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I remember watching The Exorcist for the first time. I stayed up late. My parents went to bed, and I wasn't supposed to be up watching TV, and I'd snuck out into the living room, and I think it was on like late night WGN, the old Superstation. Oh man, that movie scared the living daylights out of me. Like, I'm pretty sure if I'd have been you watching it in the bedroom, there'd been like, little Timmy sitting on the bed with the soiled sheets over in the corner. So, yeah, I just, oof, that solved me of horror movies and things like that pretty quickly. I was like, yeah, I don't know that that's for me. Where's that Star Wars movie? Let's go watch that one again.
Yeah. I got you.
All right, excellent. Well, Bo, considering the fact that you have been an MMA fighter, I'm going to get that right one of these times. Many times when professional wrestlers or MMA fighters come out, there's a song that's their entrance song. So this is a 2-part question. I have to know, what did you use for your entrance song? And if you'd like to change that moving forward for what your entrance song should be anytime you enter a random room in life.
Okay. I never thought I would be asked that question.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So complete honesty, I am not making this up. The last song I walked out to before I fought somebody in a cage was Under the Sea, the Little Mermaid theme song. True story.
But I'm guessing that had to throw the other guy off his game. Because I would have been like, what in the actual hell is going on?
Well, and the way that we decided to fight each other was as strange. So I weighed in and I was fighting at 170 pounds. So I weighed in and met my opponent, and it was like right when I met him, I was like, oh, I can tell he's pretty nervous. And then next day comes up, and the fight promotion, for whatever reason, they, I think they just orchestrated something instead of being honorable and telling me. So I show up and they say, hey, your guy actually dropped out. Allegedly, he dropped a railroad spike on his foot, injured himself, and can't compete. Yeah. And then they said, well, but this guy, his fighter dropped out as well. So would you be interested in fighting him? So I'm like, who is it? And I met him and we talked it out and said, I know nothing about you and all this stuff. He's like, well, we're in the same boat. Should we go for it? I'm like, yeah, okay. So I met someone talking for less than 5 minutes and said, all right, let's fight each other here in like 2 hours. But the interesting thing was, he weighed in at 205. So that fight, I was bruised up for a few more days than usual.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. All right. So now moving forward, if you have to pick a song to have it announce you as you're entering into a room, what song would you pick now?
Yeah. What song I would go with now, I don't really know, but for me, I've never felt the need to have a nickname. But moving forward, if somebody called and said, hey, we need you to sub in and find the UFC, I'm like, oh, just to say I've done the dance, because I still watch every UFC, every fight night, and still keep up with who's doing what, although I have no intentions of competing. But if the phone call came in, I'm like, just say yes and get the experience. Just have the experience in your life, have the memories, and hopefully you remember them. But right. So with that being said, I would totally work the system to get into the Guinness Book of World Records and say, have Bruce Buffer say, Bo, the MMA fighter with the longest nickname in history, Robert. So I would just, find a way to come up with this absurdly long nickname just for the sake of, getting into Guinness. It's all about priorities.
Hey, it's all about getting remembered too. That's definitely a good way to get remembered.
You'd probably use the Michael Myers theme song.
Yeah.
For your walkout.
Maybe, yeah. And, and if I'm walking too slow, they could just put on repeat because it sounds the exact same. Just play it again.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. You'll be all set for it.
Well, Bo, thank you so much for being on our show today. Where can our listeners go to find out more about you and your work?
Right. So my name is Bo Roberts. And if you just go on social media, you have Twitter, Instagram is my primary playground, but YouTube, all of it is synonymous with Mr. Bo Roberts. So on IG, if you type in MRBOR, then autofill should take care of the rest.
Well, thanks. We will make sure that we get some links to your stuff in our show description so that our listeners can check them out.
Absolutely.
For sure. Sounds great.
We also want to remind everybody that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to help our show to continue to grow and get amazing guests like Bo Roberts here today to have these great conversations and share a few laughs with. So please subscribe. It helps out well more than we'll ever really be able to tell you. And be sure to go check out Bo on his social media as well and see what he's got upcoming for you. But if for whatever reason you aren't happy with the content of our show today, please feel free to lodge a complaint with our complaint department. Bob, the MMA promoter. He's got contracts open everywhere, ready and waiting for somebody to step up and take a punch. So send him 2 copies of your complaint, and he'll make sure that the offending party finds their way into the octagon to receive their punishment for the punishment they gave with the microphone. But be gentle. We're wimps, and we aren't ready to get punched in the face.
I might be, but Tim might not be.
No, I'm a sissy. So 6'3" a sissy.
Well, thanks again, Bo.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Bo.
Definitely.
All right, guys, that's going to conclude us for the FSF Popcast. Goodbye. On behalf of the rest of the hosts of the FSF Popcast, we want to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, please contact us by means of Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FSFPopcast, or go to www.fsfpopcast.com and click on the Contact Me link. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed the episode.